The president-elect, the technical one, makes a big deal about how powerful he is, how everyone jumps to do his bidding, everyone wants to be his friend. But the events of the last 48 hours sure don't make him look very strong. In fact, the opposite. First, he never took the initiative on the spending bill. He just watched his co-president kill the deal. Then he tried to claim credit for it. And then he tried to command everyone, in no uncertain terms, in his party to vote for the replacement bill, only for 38 Republicans to vote against it. Then more threats. This all comes on the heels of two of his nominees failing before they even got a hearing, and more facing serious uphill battles to confirmation, not to mention a 41% approval rate before he's even sworn in. I gotta say, Donald Trump has proven himself to be extremely resilient and a formidable political opponent, no question. But this does not seem like an unbeatable colossus at all. This seems like actually a pretty weak leader who is hemorrhaging political capital. Faiz Shakir is the former senior advisor to Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid. He's currently the executive director of More Perfect Union and a senior advisor to Senator Bernie Sanders, and he joins me now. What's your read on that thesis, that he's actually pretty politically weak right now, or weaker than I think I would have guessed 4 weeks ago?
And I would add to that that he seems scared of Elon. And that's something you tend to see, right, a Trump who is in friction and in fights with people who cross him. Certainly that was the purpose of the statement yesterday, right, the threatening of primaries and all that kinds of stuff. That's what he does to people who cross him, who aren't on the same page with him. You didn't hear much about him and Elon, even though now there's reports, rumors circulating that he's not even very happy with this bill that's passed now. But he's not saying anything about Elon. Elon worked him, right? When that period, you remember that period of time where he just rushed out to Twitter with his own platform, Elon did, and announced and proceeded to tell the nation what the policy of Trump/Elon Musk's regime is. And there was nothing. There was silence. And it's funny because you think of Trump's weakness. When CR 2.0 came, right after the first one failed, he rushed out to declare, I'm in favor of this, yes, because I think he had gotten worked by Elon the first time around. So he looks scared and he looks weak, to your point.
So on that, I think it was Burgess Everett reporting that Trump is not happy, capital NOT, that the spending deal doesn't include the debt ceiling, according to a person who spoke with him this PM. Not clear he'll probably try to stop the bill in the Senate, but the bill doesn't contain his main ask. And to that, I mean, I want to go back to what he said yesterday, right? No uncertain terms. This is him like using the megaphone, right? This is supposed to be the dear leader, jump how high. If Republicans try to pass a clean continuing resolution without all the Democrat bells and whistles that will be so destructive to our country, all we'll do after January 20th is bring the mess of the debt limit into the Trump administration rather than allowing it to take place in the Biden administration. Any Republican that would be so stupid as to do this should and will be primaried. Everything should be done and fully negotiated prior to my taking office on January 20th, 2025. They all just ignored it.
They laughed it off.
Nothing. Yeah. That was just whatever.
I was also thinking, but you mentioned in the prior segment, the pharmacy benefit managers, the PBMs, literally 5 days ago, it was 4 days ago, he was at his own press conference and he said, we're going to kill the middleman. We're going to go after these PBMs. He lets Elon dictate, no, that's got to come out. Then he lets Elon dictate, no, pediatric cancer research and breast cancer research and sickle cell and Down research, all that's got to come out. He let him dictate the terms even of things that he was proclaiming just like literally days ago that he was for. He is no longer driving this car. And I think, to your point that you just raised here, House Republicans are more scared of Elon. It's clear now in the future, when they're looking ahead to the next 4 years, not worried about the primary of Donald Trump. They're worried about, is Elon going to dump money into my elections?
Well, and there was always this question, right, about what would it be like? We haven't done this since Grover Cleveland, right? What does it mean to be sworn in as a lame duck? And back then, of course, we didn't have a constitutional amendment with term limits, right? There was just a norm. So, I mean, now so this question of what does it mean to be sworn in and be a lame duck immediately, we haven't grappled with before. And the other thing I think that's happening here, I want to get your thoughts on this, is there's actually an ideological conflict. Donald Trump doesn't care about spending and the deficits. In fact, a huge innovation he brought that was very politically advantageous to the Republican Party was like, get rid of the Ryan budget stuff and the House Freedom Caucus and the Tea Party stuff. No one cares about that stuff. And I think that was hugely beneficial. It's been an enormous... Elon Musk seems like he and the House Freedom Caucus are just bringing all of those politics back. And when you had a choice between them, the two of them in the last 24 hours, it's the Elon Musk Tea Party version that won.
Yeah, it's the interest also of a billionaire class. When you think about the things that they desperately want, it is the corporate tax rates, the raising of the debt ceiling, those kinds of things, which I think Elon is also pointing towards of the future. It's not, as you're saying, expanding government spending into key areas and domains of the next, administration, which, Trump has made some promises of things that he's going to do for middle-class, working-class people. That's not aligned with where Elon's thinking what a billionaire class really wants. It's a constrained government that only, does privatization, which we're now going to get. But one of the biggest important things that we learned from this is there's an agreement, apparently, right, Chris? There's some agreement to cut $2.5 trillion in Medicare's mandatory spending, which is obviously only Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid. What are you going to? You can't cut that much money, and obviously you're going to go right at it, and that's supposed to happen in January. This is, to your point, Elon Musk's vision, not Donald Trump's.
Faz Shakir, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.